Hello everyone, I'm Dr. B. Surekha Reddy from Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Dundiga. So, I'm dealing the subject of electronic measurement and instrumentation. So, I have started the course on this particular subject EMI. So, till now what we have discussed in this subject is the introduction to EMI, why the measurement is required in a particular instrument, and what are the different characteristics we have to look in a particular instrument, and what is a transducer, and what is a basic block diagram of a particular instrument, which consists of a transducer and converting from one form to the other form, all these things. And we have discussed about different performance characteristics, that is static characteristics and dynamic characteristics, and different examples for that one. All these things have been discussed so far. So, in today's lecture, let us discuss about types of measurement errors. So, as we can see that we have different types of measurements, and that is we have to measure different type of quantities. So, when we try to measure the different type of quantities, then it will be having its own, the measurements will be different, and the standard quantities, standard units will be different, and based upon that we'll be having different type of instruments will be there, such as when we come to electronics, we'll be having from voltage measurement, we have voltmeters. For current measurement, we have current ammeters, as such as many things we have. So, in each and every instrument, there might be some certain type of errors occurring due to different factors. So, now let's look at that different types of measurement errors which occur during the measurement process in a particular instrument. So, the errors which occur during measurement are known as measurement errors. That is during the process of measurement, like whenever we are taking a particular instrument, that is, say for example an ammeter or a voltmeter as that thing. So as we are going to take that particular meter and we are trying to measure something, due to some problems in the particular instrument, that is, it might be anything, it might be affected due to the environmental changes, it might be affected due to other changes. So now, because of those things, if there is an error in the measurement process, actually, like theoretically there will be some value, but practically every time we might not be getting the same value. So that's why theoretical value and practical value will not be same. Anytime theoretical value, whichever the value we are taking, and we are using some concepts in order to solve the equations, anything, like even if we get particular value, that theoretical value which we have solved, it will not be always equal to the practical value. Definitely there will be some deviation, because every element inside the particular instrument, it will be having its own tolerance rate. Because of that reasons, the theoretical value, whenever we are measuring, we won't take the tolerance into consideration. What we will deal with the ideal values. That's why theoretical value will not be always equal to the practical value. That is one thing. And the other thing is, because of different type of changes inside the instrument, or while you are measuring the particular values in using an instrument, there might be some errors in the measurement process. So now let's look at what are the different types, major categorization, that is major categorization in this particular errors. So the types of measure are classified into three types basically. That is, first one is gross errors, second one is random errors, and third one is systematic errors. So now let's look at each of the errors elaborative. So first one is the gross errors. So the errors which occur due to the lack of experience of the observer while taking the measurement values are known as gross errors. As it says that while you are taking the measurement. So now for example, I have a meter over here. So this is a meter, and there is a pointer over here which indicates a particular measurement, and here I have different values like this one. And here, while I am measuring some measurement using this particular instrument, what happens is here, I'll be measuring at this particular point. So here, on this particular meter, there might be another glass might be there, which will be there upon this particular instrument. So now, if I look at this type of instrument, and if I'm going to measure it, if I'm the new person, like who is doing the measurement process for the first time without any prior experience of measuring the quantities using this particular instrument, at that time what happens is there might be some errors due to that process. So I'll be looking this middle value as something like 0.5. So I can take this as 1 and this is 2 and total it can be 1.5. Okay, so now this is not the exact value. This might be coming with the with lack of experience, it might be recorded as it. But if the same thing is being measured by the person who is very very experienced, they might be measuring it as something like this one, 1.65 accurately. So now as you do more number of measurements, as you have done like with lot of experience, and you are capable of knowing about the instrument completely, even if the instrument has some flaws also, you already, the person who is experienced or the person who is dealing with the instrument, they already know that okay, what is the flaw in this particular instrument. Based upon that, they'll be deciding like whether the value has to be this much or there is some deviation in that. Okay, now even in our laboratories, when we look into electronics laboratories or not, we'll be looking at different types of oscilloscopes are there, different types of analyzers are there, and different many things are there, signal generators are there, many things are there in our laboratories. So now the person who is dealing with the particular instrument over a period of time, they'll be having more experience rather than the person who is going to record something using the same instrument. So now, due to lack of experience, if there are any errors occurring, that is nothing but a gross errors over here. That is due to lack of experience of the observer. So now, how to avoid this gross errors? That is, how can we minimize the gross errors? That is by doing this particular 2 steps, we can minimize the gross errors. That is, choose the best suitable instrument based on the range of values to be measured. So now, for example, in the previous example itself, this looks something like a analog meter. Okay, so here instead of choosing a meter where there will be some deviation in the actual value where you are going to measure, you just use a digital meter. So that this digital meter directly, it shows the value very very accurately, that is 1.65. Just by looking at this particular meter, you can accurately measure this particular value and you can note it down. Even if the observer is a new person, still there won't be any error in the particular measured value over there. Okay, there is no need of experience in this position. Instead of using this type of meter, you can use digital meter. At that time, the accuracy, like the more accurately you can measure the particular quantity. That is, choose a best suitable instrument according to the user, according to your experience. If you choose best suitable instrument, there won't be, like, based upon the range of values where you're going to measure. If you're going to choose this particular meter, then there might not be that much of errors while you're measuring this thing. So second thing is, carefully note down the readings carefully. So this is the only thing which we can do. First thing is, that is, you can choose best suitable instrument, or the other thing is you have to note down all the readings very very carefully. These are the 2 steps that can be used in order to avoid the particular gross errors which occur due to lack of experience of the observer during the measurement process. Next one is a systematic errors. So if the instrument produces an error which is of a constant uniform deviation during its operation, is known as systematic error. So what it means, that constant uniform deviation, and the name itself says that it is systematic error. That is, even if the error is occurring in the particular instrument, that is in the measurement process, that error will occur very very systematically. That is to say, like, if the deviation, if the uniform deviation means, like, if the measured value has to be something like 5.0, every time it shows 5.2. And in other measurement, like if it has to show 7.0, it might be showing 7.2. And in other type of measurement, if it has to show 7.5, it might be showing 7.7. So now I can say that the uniform deviation is 0.2 value over here. That is to say, in this type of the error which occurs, like with uniform deviation, is nothing but a systematic error which shows a uniform deviation. Once you look at these values, you can see that 5.0 to 5.2, 7.5 to 7.7, 7.0 to 7.2. So like this, the error will be there and it will be very very uniform, and this can be called as also systematic error over here. So the different types of systematic errors are, first one is the instrumental errors which occur because of the instrument which we are using. Second one is the environmental errors, that is a change in the environmental conditions. And the last one is third one is the observational errors which occur due to the while we are observing, while we are noting down some value, there might be some error while we are noting down the value. So that type of error comes under the observational errors. So let's look at each of the errors. So instrumental errors. This type of errors occur due to shortcomings of instruments and loading effects. So now if there is an instrument which we are using for the measurement and the instrument itself, it has some particular flaw in this one. So now here due to that flaw, definitely there will be some deviation in the particular value. Now for example, there is a meter again. I'm going to consider meter here mostly. So here there is a meter over here. So this is a 0.0 value. It has to indicate at rest. Whenever it is rest, it has to indicate this particular value. But instead of that one, it might be showing something like this one. Here it might be showing. Okay. So now I can say this is the deviation. This is the problem in the particular instrument. So when it has to show 0 value, it might be showing some other value, some value it might be indicating it. So now because of that, I can also set it as an offset also. Because of the shortcomings of instrument, there might be some errors in the measurement process. That is, now once we look at this one, instead of showing the value, if it has to measure 1.0 and here the deviation is 0.5 for example, okay, at rest it is showing 0.5. Now whenever it is in process, it might be showing again 0.5 itself. Actually it should show 1.0, but instead of that, it might, the indicator might be indicating to this value, that is 0.5. So because of this, see, I can say that because of the errors in the instrument, there is a deviation occurring over here. That is nothing but a error in the particular instrument. And the next one is these are the shortcomings of the instrument. And next one is the loading effects. Now once I say that there is a loading effect here, now loading effect means something is loading on the particular instrument. That is to say here, 1 minute. So here loading effect is nothing but, now I have two. One is this one is an instrument and this is a circuit or any block area or any other instrument also you can take into consideration. Now this circuit output is given to the instrument in order to see some certain type of inputs to this one. Okay, so you also think as an oscilloscope or any visualization device or any meter, you can say. Any meter you can take into consideration. Now that circuit, I'm giving it to the particular instrument. Now, as I'm giving it to the oscilloscope or meter, what happens? It has to show the output of the circuit in this particular oscilloscope or the meter. Okay, whichever, whether I'm measuring the average value or whether I want to see the graphical representation of the output, I'll be looking in the particular instrument. But this circuit output, it will be having its own impedance value. Okay, so this impedance value, whenever it is coming to the particular instrument, it might be giving some loading effect. That is, it might be giving some extra burden to this particular oscilloscope or this particular meter which we are using. And because of that thing, what happens is, actually this meter has its own principle of operation. But because of the loading of the particular circuit which is coming as an input to this meter, because of that thing, what happens is it induces the loading effect on the particular meter, and because of that thing, the meter reading might be changed. So this type of thing also, it might lead to some sort of errors. So the best way to use an attenuator in the beginning of the meter, or use any buffer in between the path from the circuit to the meter. So by doing these things, what we can do is we can reduce the particular loading effect over there. And we have to ensure that whatever the output we are getting from the circuit, that measurement has to be same in the measuring instrument also. So for that purpose, what we have to do is we have to definitely avoid the loading effects. But if there is a loading effect, definitely there will be an error in the particular measurement process, and that error is nothing but instrumental error. So next type is the environmental errors. This type of errors occur due to the changes in the environment, such as change in temperature, pressure, etc. So now if we take the change in the temperature, pressure, etc., as we said here. So now we have an instrument which is used to measure the day-to-day temperature variations like whenever it is possible, we'll be placing it in a place, and every time it measures the changes in the temperature. But if there is an extreme sunny day, like if there is extreme heat on a particular day, or if it is a very very cold on a particular day, okay, at that time that particular instrument, it has to withstand all the temperature changes. If the instrument is unable to withstand the particular changes in the temperature, at that time definitely there will be some problem in the elements inside the instrument also. And because of this thing, there can occur errors in the measurement process. So as you can see now, this instrument is there. Inside this instrument, suppose I have some passive elements such as resistor, capacitor and inductor, something like this. These elements are there inside the instrument. But this instrument, it has its own temperature tolerance rate is there. So now it can only tolerate up to some certain temperature. But what I'm doing is, I'm going to place this particular instrument in very very extreme heated conditions where the temperature, now it is operating only up to 60 degrees Celsius, for example. Now I'm placing it in a place where the temperature can rise up to 100 degrees Celsius. I don't know, it might be rising up to 100 degrees, but without knowing, like we have placed it at 100 degrees Celsius temperature. So now, as this instrument cannot withstand this much of temperature, what happens is, there will be change in the resistance or inductance or capacitance or whatever the inside elements are there in this particular instrument. All those values might be changing. Because of that reason, there might occur some error. So that errors which are occurring due to the changes in the temperature or pressure or any environmental situations or conditions are nothing but environmental errors. And the next one is observational errors. So this type of errors occur due to the observer while taking the meter readings. Parallax errors belong to this type of errors. So parallax errors are nothing but while I am measuring some particular value. So this type of errors actually mostly will be seeing in analog meters actually. So now whenever we take any analog meter, it looks like this. It looks like this one. So upon this one, I'll be having again one mirror will be there. So in labs also, or when we are driving a vehicle, we can see on that one, like the speedometer also we can see. So this type of meter you can see over there. So now whenever I'm taking a measurement, if the pointer is pointing at this one place, so now as I'm measuring this particular value, if I'm unable to properly and accurately mark this value, and there might be readings like this. This is 1 point. So this is 1, for example, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, and this is 2. Now the pointer might be pointing to this particular place. Okay. So now it is nothing but 1.4 value actually. But as I'm observing the particular meter, and because of observational errors, as I'm seeing the particular value, I'm unable to note it down as 1.4. I might be noting it down 1.2 or either 1.2 or 1.6 values. At that time, the error which is occurring due to the observational errors, this is nothing but a parallax error. That is, instead of 1.4, if I'm going to measure it as 1.2 or 1.6 or any other value, then I'll say it as a parallax error. So now this type of errors occur due to the observer. Because of the observer, they are not able to accurately measure the particular value. That's because of this reason the observational errors occur. So next type is a random error. So the errors which occur due to unknown sources during measurement time are known as random errors. So as the name itself says that these errors are random errors. Random itself it says that we don't know that. Like it occurs randomly without any proper reason. This type of error might come into picture like during the measurement process. So that's why we don't know the source of this particular error. That is due to the unknown sources. There might be some errors in the measurement. So at that time, that random errors might be occurring. Hence, it is not possible to eliminate or minimize these errors completely. So what we can do is, if we want to get the more accurate measurement values without any random error, then we can follow these 2 steps. That is, in step 1, we can take more number of readings by different observers. So now, when I am measuring some particular values, okay, the experiment is same, the conditions are same, everything is same, experimental setup, the inputs to the setup, everything are same. And if I am taking some readings, I might be taking as some values, and now we can ask another observer to take the readings of the same experiment, and I can repeat this process with multiple number of observers, and I can take more number of readings to check like whether I'm getting any error in the particular, like from one observer to the other observer, whether I'm getting some variation or deviation or not. And step 2 is to do statistical analysis on the readings obtained in step 1. So now after taking more number of readings from different by using different observers, we will be getting more number of readings. At that time, what we do in step 2 is we do statistical analysis on the readings which we have acquired. So now we have different type of statistical parameters are there. So now these are nothing but mean, median, variance, deviation, standard deviation. All these are nothing but the parameters that are used in the statistical analysis. And each of these parameters can be used in order to find whether there is an error or not. And even if there is an error, can we minimize or eliminate this particular error. So let's look at each of the parameters, statistical parameter over here. So first one is mean, which is nothing but the average value. Mean, in short, we can say that it is an average value. And let us suppose if we have n number of readings, that is x1, x2, x3, so on up to xn number of readings are there for a particular measurement process, the mean or average values of these readings can be calculated by using the following formula. That is, mean equals to summation of, that is the sum of all the readings, all the readings divided by total number of readings. That is summation of xi, that is I equals to 1 to capital N divided by capital N. Okay, so that is what we have to do is we have to sum up all the readings and divide by total number of readings in order to get this particular mean value or average value. So now once we get this one, here where m is the mean or average value, and if the number of readings of a particular measurement are more, then the mean or average value will be approximately equal to the true value. If you are going to consider more number of readings. Okay, so now whenever we are, like see here, x1, x2, x3, xn, I said like these are n number of readings we are taking for a particular measurement. So that is to say like x1 is taken by one observer, x2 is taken by another observer, x3 is taken by another observer, third observer, so on up to nth observer. I am going to take all these particular readings. After that, what I'll do is I'll take the mean or average value of these readings. Once I take this value, if the number of observers or the number of readings are high, comparably, like if you take more number of readings, at that time whatever the mean value I'm getting, that will be the true value. True value is nothing but the value without any error. Okay, so now this will be something like the error can be like even if there is a random error occurring also, that still can be eliminated, or what we can say, we can minimize the particular random error by finding this particular mean value. Okay, so now finally at the end of the experiment or at the end of the measurement process, what I can say is small n value is nothing but the actual reading that is shown by the particular instrument for this particular experiment. And next one is the median, second statistical parameter. So if the number of readings of a particular measurement are more, then it is difficult to calculate the mean or average value. As I said that previously, if more number of readings are there in a particular measurement process, then the mean value will be more or less equal to the true value. Then I can say that that particular value is very, very accurate, I can say. But as I go on increase the number of values, as I go on increase the number of readings, what happens is here, the value is summation of all these values divided by total number of. Now, doing the summation of this many, like for example, I have 100 readings are there. If I have 100 readings, to sum up all the 100 readings I am taking divided by 100, it is very, very difficult. So that's why what we can do alternatively is we can use median instead of mean or average value in order to find the particular measurement value. So now what I can do is here calculate the median value, and it will be approximately equal to the mean value. So now for calculating median value, first we have to arrange the readings of a particular measurement in an ascending order. So now if I have n number of readings, that is x1, x2, so on up to I have xn number of readings are there. Now all these readings have to be arranged in ascending order, that is small to big. Ascending order in the sense that is small to bigger value. I have to arrange all the readings. That is because each and every user, they might not be recording the same value. So that's why what we have to do is we have to arrange all these values initially in ascending order for calculating the mean. So once I calculate, once I arrange all these values in the ascending order, we calculate the median value by using the following formula when the number of readings is equals to odd number. That is m equals to x of n plus 1 by 2. Now here I have n number of readings, x1, x2, x2, so on, x3, sorry, I'll take only 7 number of readings. Now n equals to 7 I'm considering. So just for the understanding purpose, but n won't be equals to 7 because it is a very small number. Rather than that, we'll be taking more numbers, that is more than 50 or something like that. But for explanation purpose, we are taking only n equals to 7 right now. So 3, x4, x5, x6, x7. So now, as I can see here, the number of readings over here are odd in number. So, as these are odd in number, what will be my median value? Actually, after arranging it in ascending order, these are also as arranged in ascending order also. So now, what is the mean value when it is when the number of readings is odd number? It is m equals to x of n plus 1 by 2. Now I can say it as x of n plus 1 by 2 means 7 plus 1, x of 7 plus 1 by 2. So from this one what I can say, x of 8 by 2, that is equals to x4. x4. So now this x4, that is nothing but the middle value, is nothing but the median value. I can take this middle value as the median value, which is nothing but the measurement output of a particular measurement process. So this is the reading, actual reading which we have to measure. So now now this is the case for odd number of readings. What happens if the number of readings is even? Okay. So at that time what we will be having, instead of x7, what I have is here. So instead of x7, I'll be having x8. Till x8 I'll be having, this is 8. And now I can't take any middle value because these are equally divided. x1 to x4, 4 are there. x5 to x8, 4 are there. So now I can't pick out one middle value. Even after arranging in ascending order also, we can't pick any middle value. So at that time what I can do is, I can use this particular formula where I have to measure it. That is x of n by 2 plus x of n by 2 plus 1 whole divided by 2. So now let's see how to measure it. Now what is x of n by 2? X of 8 by 2. X of 8 by 2 is equals to x of 8 by 2 equals to x of 4 here, as n equals to 8. And here it is x of n by 2, that is nothing but x of 4, that is plus x of 4 plus 1. This is 4, right? So now 4 plus 1, it is x of 5. Now what is x of 4 here? x4 and x8 is there. Now the median value will be the average of both these values. Average of both x4 and x5 values. That is, you have to pick middle two values and you have to take the average value in order to find the median value. So this is the way to find the median of any number of readings. Even if it is an even number or odd number, you can find it in this way. Next one is the deviation for mean. This is also one of the statistical parameters that can be used to find the random error. So the difference between the reading of a particular measurement and the mean value is known as the deviation from mean. That is, see here, the reading of a particular measurement process and the mean value is nothing but the deviation from mean. Actually, what we have learned so far is nothing but mean is nothing but more or less equal to the true value. True value means that is the actual value which we have to acquire. So now, whatever the deviation we are getting from this actual or true value is nothing but a deviation from the actual value. That is error, right? So now, by taking the deviation from mean, we can find how much error is there actually in the measurement process. That is, if the mean value I got is 1.5, I'll say that this might be the true value. This might be the true value. So now, if I get the xi value, the measurement in the measurement process, I have measured it as 1. Now the deviation will be 0.5. So I can say this is the error in the particular measurement process over. So in short, it is called as a deviation, and mathematically it can be represented as dA equals to xi minus m, where dA is the deviation of ith reading from mean, whereas xi is the value of the ith reading and m is the mean or average value. So that is to say, here deviation is nothing but deviation from the true value. That is, this is the actual value that we have, like we have observed. This is the ith reading which we have observed, and like when I take the deviation with respect to the mean value, I'm getting the deviation from mean. From this one, we can say like how much error is there in the particular measurement process. Next one is the standard deviation. That is nothing but the root mean square of deviation is called as standard deviation. So now, mathematically, it can be represented as sigma equals to under root of d1 square plus d2 square plus d3 square plus d so on up to plus dn square divided by capital N. Capital N is nothing but the total number of readings here. So where sigma is the standard deviation, d1, d2, d3 so on up to dn are the deviation of first, second, third so on up to nth readings from mean respectively, and capital N is nothing but the total number of readings. So now the standard deviation is the root mean square. That is, this is square. Mean is nothing but adding everything and dividing by total number and root. So that's why we say that it is a root mean square of deviation. Deviation is again nothing but d1 equals to x1 minus m value. So now that is the deviation of first reading with respect to the mean value. D2 is nothing but the x2 minus m. That is the deviation of the second reading from the mean value, and so on here like this. Okay. So now sigma can be calculated by using this particular equation, that is from under root of d1 square plus d2 square plus d3 square so on by divided by total number. This is nothing but total number of readings. So here this standard deviation also it says like how much it is deviated from the particular actual value which we want to measure actually. So now the particular equation which we have seen previously, it is valid only if the number of readings is less than 20. Only for the values less than 20, number of readings less than 20, the previous equation will be holding, like it is possible. Okay, whenever you are measuring any standard deviation, just choose this equation if the number of readings is less than 20, and if the number of readings is greater than or equal to 20, then the equation becomes sigma equals to under root of d1 square plus d2 square plus d3 square so on by capital N minus 1. So instead of n, what we'll be having is capital N minus 1. This has to be used like when the n is greater than or equals to 20. That is, the number of readings is greater than or equals to 20. Better use this particular equation in order to find the standard deviation over there. And here again, where sigma is the standard deviation, d1, d2, d3 so on are nothing but the deviations of the first, second, third so on up to nth readings from mean respectively. And next statistical parameter that is used to find the random errors is nothing but the variance, which is the square of the standard deviation, the square of the standard deviation. So mathematically, how I can write it as V equals to sigma square. V equals to sigma square. Sigma is nothing but the standard deviation. So the square of the standard deviation is nothing but the variance over here. Now, where V is the variance and sigma is the standard deviation. So now the mean square of deviation, as it is called as a variance. Now V is equals to d1 square plus d2 square plus d3 square plus so on plus dn square divided by capital N for n less than 20. As we can see in the from the previous equation, we have seen that for n less than 20, the sigma value is under root of d1 square plus d2 square plus d3 square so on divided by capital N. So now as it has square root, and now I am applying the square and square root will be gone. Right. So now square root into square root will be simple. Like this square root won't be there. Right. So that's why here the square root is gone. Now this equation is hold only for n less than 20. That is number of readings. If number of readings are less than 20, then we can use this particular equation. And if number of readings are greater than or equal to 20, then we can use this particular equation. Again the same thing, that is V equals to sigma square for capital N greater than or equals to 20. You have to use this particular sigma value over here. That's why we have capital N minus 1 instead of capital N value over here. And so again here we use a variance, and D1, D2, D3 are the readings of first, second, third reading values which are deviated from the mean value. And now let's look at one question over here. So in order to understand like the percent, like what is error, how the error will be occurring over here and all. So now in the question we have the expected value of the voltage across a resistor is 80 volts. That is the expected value, means that value which we want to acquire in the particular voltage, like across a resistor I want a voltage drop that has to be as 80 volts. Okay, I have a resistor circuit here, and across this one the voltage drop has to be 80 volts. That is my, according to my measurement process, that is my expected value over here. So now however the measurement gives a value of 70 volts instead of giving 80 volts, it shows as 79 volts. Now what is to be done is calculate the absolute error, percentage error, relative accuracy and percentage accuracy of this particular in this particular measurement process. So now as you can see, the absolute error is nothing but the whatever the value you are we are expecting, that is expected value minus the measured value over here. That is y is nothing but the expected value, and here this is nothing but the measured value. So whatever the deviation or whatever the difference is there from the expected value to the measured value, it is nothing but the absolute error. That is, I have the measured value to be 80 and I have the expected value to be 80, and what I have measured using the particular instrument is 79. Now what is the error? What is the error over here? Simply it is nothing but 1 volts. So it is deviating from 80 volts to 79 volts. So the error will be here, absolute error will be here equals to 1 volts. And next one is the percentage error. So now percentage error is nothing but the difference divided by the actual value. Every time it will be like that, right? So now whenever I want to measure the percentage of error, that is percentage of error from the actual value, from the expected value. So now as I'm taking it is as the percentage of error from the expected value, just remember that. So now because of that one here, what is the deviation? That is yn minus xn, that is equals to 80 minus 79, and the error is with respect to the expected value. That is expected value, again it will be yn. That's why we'll be writing the equation as yn minus xn by yn. So now it will be equals to 80 minus 79 divided by 80. So from this I can say as it is a percentage, we are going to calculate over here. That's why what we do is we can multiply it by 100. So finally I'll be getting it as 1.25% deviation I'm getting from the expected value which I had to get, that is 80 volts, but rather than that I'm getting 79 volts. Because of that one I can say the percentage error is equals to 1.25%. The next one is the relative accuracy. So now the term itself says that it is a relative accuracy. So now what I have to take it as from the overall 100%. Okay, whenever we say the relative accuracy, whenever we say something is accurate, we will definitely measure in terms of 100% itself. So whenever we say whenever we are measuring, whenever we are taking performance metrics of any experiment or anything, what we'll say is that any experiment will be having, what we'll try to get is 100% accurate system will try to get it. So now whenever we say the relative accuracy, relatively I'll be measuring with respect to 100% itself. That's why here I have 1 minus. Okay, so now what is that? 1 minus error value. Error, what is error here? Error is nothing but the absolute error divided by the expected value. That is 1 minus modulus yn minus xn by yn. Okay, so I don't want any negative values here. That's why I'm taking the modulus over here. So now after that, it is 1 minus 80 minus 79 by 80. 80 minus 79 by 80 is something like 0.125 you'll be getting. 0.0125 you'll be getting. So 1 minus 1 minus 1 by 80. That is nothing but 1 minus 0.0125. actually. So now finally you'll be getting it as 0.9875. Okay. So this is nothing but the relative accuracy of this particular measurement process. So now if we calculate say next one is nothing but the percentage accuracy. So if we calculate the percentage accuracy, that will be equals to A equals to 100 into accuracy value. So now 100 into A is nothing but this is A. So I can take it as 100 into 0.9875, that is nothing but 98.75%. How much is accurate? How much the system is accurate? Like whenever someone asks, like you have to calculate the absolute, relative accuracy and multiply with the particular 100 into 100. You can get it as a percentage accuracy of it. Or what we can do is 100% minus percentage of error is also nothing but what is the percentage of accuracy. As I already said that the accuracy definitely it can be measured with respect to 100%. Every time whenever we do any measurement or any other process, what we want is a 100% accurate system. So now if I want a 100% accurate system, definitely like if I already know that there is a percentage error of this much, okay, this is the percentage error in the particular instrument, like in the measurement process. So as I see that this is the percentage error, directly I can take the difference of this thing, that is percentage of error, 100% minus percentage of error. So directly I can get it as 100% minus 1.225%, that is equals to 98.75%. So in this way we can find the absolute error, percentage error, relative accuracy and the percentage of accuracy in a particular measurement process. So you can understand that like by looking at this particular problem or the examples which I have discussed so far, you can understand that in any measurement process definitely there will be some certain type of errors. So whatever task is to decrease these errors as much as possible. That is not getting 98.75% accurate system. Our target has to be getting the 100% accurate system. It might not be possible practically, but still we have to try for getting more and more accurate system by using different type of things. That is, instead of using one type of instrument which is not capable of withstanding some circumstances, we can use an instrument which can withstand which can tolerate most of the conditions over there. So because of that, what we can do is we can reduce the error in that one. So once we take any experiment, the circuitry is a very big task. The circuit, like designing a particular circuit in electronics basically is a very, very big task. And writing some algorithm for a particular controller or anything, like if I take FPGA or any microcontroller, any microprocessor, writing the algorithm for that one and working, dumping it and getting some results is very, very difficult process. So now, as the difficulty is there in the designing of the circuitry and as well as the algorithm itself, and even if I have the difficulties while during the measurement process in the instrument also, then it will be we will be coming with a very, very low accurate system. That's why we have to select a proper instrument where there are the errors are as less as possible, so that the measurement will be very, very accurate. So now in this class I have discussed about different types of measurement errors and how to find those errors and how to calculate all these error values and all. So now in the next class let us discuss about PMMC, that is permanent magnetic moving coil, that is in different types of instrument. PMMC is one type of instrument. So we'll be discussing about that PMMC instrument in the next class. Okay, thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.